the image that we put on an exhibition about Wild Days, which was Bristol, sort of the sort of beginnings of Bristol sound, which was very interconnected between Bristol, the music scene, and the graffiti scene. So imaged by Beezer, who is a photographer who was very immersed in that scene during the 80s, mid-80s, and this is an image of, I think it's 3D, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so from Master Attack, he was one of the significant artists to bring sort of wild style graffiti to Bristol. He was very, very significant in the scene locally. In that small exhibition, actually, we included works by Inky Chio and some more recent, who were kind of quite well established artists, and Andy Stott, Jeff Rowe, who were known as Defrost when they worked collaboratively, and another artist called Ben Durnley. So I'm just going to kind of run through some to give you a sense of some of the things. That led on to another artist, and we put on this Jamaica Street Artist exhibition. Now, people kind of thought we were putting on a street artist from at all. It just happens to be the name of a studio Bristol, who are very active and are also, if you know, they're based in Stokes Trough, so they're kind of quite an important studio in the kind of city's cultural life. So a couple of very diverse practice actually, and some quite, it's more commercial, about 40 artists putting on work. And that was a kind of a fundraiser for them to help put a deposit on their building so they could purchase their building, which I don't think they've done yet because they didn't raise enough, but they're still trying hard. Interesting, Lorraine mentioned tagging. We've got one of the first works which came out of the Crimes of Passion exhibition, which I mentioned, which happened at the Royal West of England Academy, was the museum made a purchase of its first purchase of street art. It's not strictly street art; it's a spray paint on canvas. But this artist is called Zimmel, and his practice is around tagging, and this is a kind of abstracted version of his tag, I believe. So I don't know if the Friends of the Art Gallery realised that they were committing funds to buying a tag, but they may be pleased that it's been popular in terms of the visits. So that's one of the first purchases we made in this area. We work in other ways. We commissioned some other artists to do some work through a project called The Shape of Things. These are artists. This is Alina Asadeh, who's an Iranian artist, Anglo-Iranian, and another. There was a double exhibition, Rosa Nagayan, who was worked in response to our collections, both working in the kind of crafts area. Another outcome of that exhibition was that we were left with one of the Banksy's work on the plinth on the left-hand side as you come into the museum, which is the Paper Angel. You probably saw it on the way in. And there was a sculpture in the show that he took away afterwards. So we were left with an empty plinth, so we thought, well, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to engage Bristol artists with that? So we decided to work with an artist-led group called Container, who put on a series of very successful exhibitions which were very focused and very pared down with a single artist, a single room, and they just did a single work in a short residency of a month or so. So what we did was we invited those artists to explore the museum and the context of the museum by putting their work on the plinth or working around the notion of the plinth. So it's not an original idea because you recognise it from the Trafalgar Square, Fourth Bend. They came up with some interesting and surprising results, which we were pleased, and we didn't know what we were expecting. So it's about us. It's about the museum, about handing over an element of control to the artists, and that was the case in most of these exhibitions that I talked about. It's not about us as curators going out and saying we want this particular type of thing. It was more about a dialogue and discussion with artists about what they were interested in exploring. So it was as much about developing the artist's practice as it was about us having something for the public as well. Some more of those. A series of 6, the last one is still there actually, on the right. Another consequence of that exhibition was that we were approached by a commercial gallery in the States called Corey Helford Gallery, who specialise in kind of what's termed as it's not outsider, but it's lowbrow and kind of that sort of thing. So various names it has. But one of the artists in that was Buff Monster, so we invited him to paint directly in the museum on the walls and the entrance to the museum. And there's a detail on the left, and we also had a work in the exhibition which we purchased into our permanent collection. So that was kind of another work which we then purchased. He subsequently came back quite recently, so he's painted. He had a show in London a few weeks ago, and he painted in Bristol and Stokes Croft a couple of weeks ago. I've seen his in action. Kind of backtracking, I'm just trying to think of time scales. It was before this, wasn't it? It was going back a couple of years. We worked with a number of artists because we had the opportunity to get some funding through Arts Council, and we were interested in the notion of conflict and challenging, and that was one of the proposals we put in. So we got some funding so we could actually work directly with some artists. So we have the pleasure of having one of the artists here, Motorboy, in the room, and this is not the work he produced for that commission, but it was a work which went into the Royal West England Academy Crimes of Passion show, and we've also purchased a work of his, which is the middle one of the three light boxes in the centre. So we've got that in our permanent collection. We'd love you to go and look in the galleries at some point during your lunch break. Another artist was Helga Gamboa, and another artist was Graham Evelyn Mortimer. They all produced works which will be going into our new museum, which we're building down on the harbour side, which is called M Shed, which opens in a few weeks' time. That was a previous round of funding about 2 years ago. With just this last 12 months, the second round of funding came through, so we were able to commission a couple of other artists. So we were very interested in the work that was going on. So we kind of referenced back to the Crimes of Passion exhibition. So we were interested in work by Luke Palmer, Ace of the One, and also Andy Council. We've commissioned and have already purchased some Andy Council work into the collection. This is a collaborative work with Andy and
Matt Pugh.
Matt Pugh, thanks Andy. And we have a couple of Andy's works now in the collection, and the Bristol Underdog is the actual model is the one we've got in the collection. I think we've got Blueprint somewhere as well.
It's upstairs somewhere.
Yeah. That led us on to wanting to commission. We saw their work at Upfest last year, and we were looking for an interesting approach to interpreting the city, and we felt that both those artists did that through their work naturally. They collaborated, I think, for the first time at Upfest, and we invited them to come and do some work in Edinburgh, which you'll see a kind of, I'm not going to spoil this. That's not what it is. That was their proposal. It's much better than that in real life, but it's fantastic. You'll be able to see that. I'm not going to give. I don't want to kind of dwell on it because I don't want to spoil the image. Finally, we've just recently commissioned Richard Long, who's uses mud. He had a major show at the Tate last year. He paints directly onto the wall, and he uses mud, and he uses vinyls and text. So in some ways, originally a sculptor. Was he at Central St Martin's? He might even have been a graduate of Central St Martin's.
UW.
Really? Okay. So I was going to leave on that. So that just gives you a context of where we are. We have obviously we have historic collections as well, but just to say that we're very interested in engaging with artists in lots of different ways. We don't condone graffiti, but we obviously do because we bought works directly into the collection. So I don't think we would get away with that if it was cool. A couple of things just leave you on, which just sort of points in Bristol's kind of calendar. Right, thanks.